Hello and welcome to a special webinar on mastering arrears. And today we are joined by Bernadette Sheridan, Head of Sales from PayProp. How you doing, Bernie?
Oh, very well, thank you. All the better for seeing the two Davids this morning today.
Yes, we've got a very special David has joined us today, not just me, but Mr. David Votta. Thanks
Oh,
for David.
thank you for having me.
Now it goes without saying that I think David Votta is well documented as being a big fan of PayProp in general, and I know I've interviewed him on that previously. But today, I think we're going to talk about something that sometimes is a little bit sensitive, and that's arrears management. So we'll just have a bit of a round table discussion on that, and I know we'll both be asking you some questions. But I'm going to hand over to Bernadette to perhaps put the first one to you, David.
Okay, so David, you inspired this actually from a message you sent on a Sunday morning. I know it's something. I know getting arrears management right is something that you feel very, very strongly about. And it's something that I know is always on your mind, informing us that you've done an analysis on your arrears. Can you remember and recall the message? You can adjust it then here.
Not word for word, but it was, you know, when you get these moments of inspiration where you're either in the shower, the bathroom, or working out, and you think, right, that's the good thing about having your phone on hand, because you can just quickly note it down, get it done. So it was a case of, for PayProp clients specifically, or even any letting agent across the country, a really good selling point is how low your arrears are. And it's one thing that's always been a bone of contention with landlords. They worry about condition of the property, rent arrears, how quickly you can let it, and then of course fees. So with that in mind, like, I was working with my chief of compliance, and he said, "You do realise you're well under the national average for rent arrears." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, the national average hovers around 9%. You're coming in." He did some kind of calculation, which I still can't get my head around, but he's going to message it to me later. We worked out by looking at our portfolio, the arrears, when the rent was due, and how many. It was actually, no one was in arrears, but because the time that the rent was due, it was like on the day, it worked out at 0.84%. And I thought, landlords need to hear that. And I think if we can extrapolate that data from PayProp, then that's something PayProp users could go, right, just to let you know, on the social media, on the website, wherever you want to put it, this month we're operating at 0.84% arrears. Did you know we are running under the national average for rent arrears in our organisation? What's your current agent's rent arrears level? And it's a really good selling point.
So 0.84%, David, is virtually, as you say, it's virtually
Zero.
nothing.
Yeah.
In real terms for the stats, and it's a great figure, and that's exactly where you'd want it as an agent, because don't forget, if you're not collecting rent in, you can't charge fees, and we all end up getting ourselves into trouble with landlords who end up in long-term arrears, getting fees out of anybody who's not able to recoup that from the tenant. Very difficult. But in terms of your success story with that, and the way that you keep those arrears down, I'm guessing that identifying arrears very early on in a relationship with the tenant is the way to manage them best. So can you just sort of give us some insight into how you're using PayProp to get those results?
It's very simple, because with PayProp, it notifies you the day that the tenant is in arrears. So for argument's sake, say the rent's due on the 30th of the month, and that tenant hasn't paid in the morning when you check the account, or the platform rather, then it will notify it as an arrear. However, they're not in arrears until midnight that night, but it gives you the heads up to say, right, that they're due to pay on this day. The money hasn't come in this morning. You know, you could give them a chase this afternoon and just say, look, your rent's in today on the 30th, but, you know, it's 5 o'clock now. We usually get it. Is there something wrong? Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. It's due in tomorrow. Okay, well, no, I know it's due in tomorrow, but it's just a bit bizarre that that's happened. So you almost preempt things from happening. Then obviously the action is taken the next day. So you come in the next day, you check the account. If it doesn't come in after you've spoken to the tenant, and then you can basically see whether or not they've gone into arrears, and you can say, right, okay, so we send the text and the email out from PayProp. You know, we've got that. We can put in another call, say, hi, David, just to let you know your rent didn't come in. We've sent you a text and notification. And the beauty of that is it reminds them of their reference number, so it can be allocated accordingly. And it's another gentle reminder, because we're in a bit of a snowflake society, guys, if you didn't know. You say something like, please pay your rent, it can be deemed as harassment or offensive. So we have to be very careful in how we word things before we get to day 7, 14, 28, and we start getting a little bit more direct.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, what is it about PayProp that, other than that initial, but do you think helps you to effectively reduce the arrears? Is it that it makes it a bit more gentle, a little less personal, and you know, it's more of a business information? What is it that makes it more effective to reduce arrears?
It takes that element of my agents being mean to me, my agents chasing me for the rent. We're only asking you to do what you signed up to. We're not asking you to do anything else. We're not asking you to breach the Tenant Fees Act. We're not asking you to pay early. We're not asking you to do anything than you've already contracted to do. And it just blows my mind how even today that you have a contract which is an assured short tenancy agreement, so a Law of Property Act contract that stems from 1925 that can be breached. And yet when you want that person to, you know, perform the elements of that contract, they get upset about it. It's like, it takes that, like you say, takes that personal thing away. This is nothing personal, Bernie, but the rent's due. PayProp has told me your rent's due. So our arrears management system, I don't want to have to call the landlord. I really don't want to do it, but you're leaving me no choice. Because let's not forget, we aren't the landlord at the end of the day, which many tenants think we have ultimate control. We're that go-between. We are the person that facilitates that relationship and keeps the landlord in line to make sure he's compliant, or she, and the tenant as well, to make sure they perform the obligations as per their contract, and then that duty of care to the tenant as well. So we have to be everything to everyone, and I think PayProp facilitates that and takes that burden, that tiresome piece away from you.
And do you use do you utilize the tenant portal as well for your business?
I can't answer that because I don't know. I spoke to one of my property managers this morning and say, look, have we got any tenants using that? And they say, no, it's quite effective the way we're doing it anyway. So yeah, I guess that's always there as a safety net and something that many can use and benefit from.
Yeah, I suppose it's just another one of those things that if you needed to sort of depersonalize it or make it a little bit more about business, it always makes sense to sort of take away that kind of barrier to payment. They've got various different options, and they could use, you know, it's nice to know that you've got that portal, you've got the app there, to be able to fall back on that at any time that you need to. And particularly if as we've known from the pandemic, our businesses needed to change. So we don't know when we'll suddenly have to send people home and rely on apps more than others. But right now we're able to do quite a lot face to face. But in terms of sort of managing arrears management, you touched on it very briefly over there. That you said eventually you have to pick up the phone to the landlord. Eventually the landlord needs to know about this. So to roll a few questions perhaps into one, are, you know, I suppose if you've got really low arrears, you might not have conversations with landlords every day about this. But one thing I do know about you is that you talk to lots of other, you know, property mark agents up and down the country.
Yeah.
Is that something that landlords are concerned about at the moment?
Yeah.
Is it a constant process of having to sort of reassure them? What are you hearing?
Yeah, and it is. You know, we went through COVID. We got cost of living crisis. There's all sorts of things going on. So it's having that knowledge and the confidence to reassure them. Like we had, like one landlord. Look, only last week it was, David, where the landlord's emailed in and said, "Oh, well, I was expecting the rent today. Why has it not come in?" But he didn't factor in that it was due over the weekend. So he didn't understand that. You know, we build it into our terms and conditions. It's very clear. Say, David, look, if your rent is due on the Saturday or the Sunday, just be mindful that there may be nobody to check the system to approve and put that through till the following day. So whilst we do promote the same day payments, we also say if it's not with you within 3 days, do not panic, because if there is a problem, we will identify it and we'll get on the phone to you. So it's just laying those concerns, isn't it? Saying, look, we've got this covered. We are the experts here. And, you know, everybody thinks they're a property expert, don't they? And they're very quick to give agents advice on how they should be doing their job. And then when you look at it, like I was putting together a contract this morning for a client, just wants a contract because they're quite capable of managing themselves. I said, yeah, send me over your electric, because the tenant moved out a month ago. Send me over your electrical report, your gas safety, and let's, you know, give me all the details I need to draft this contract. And this is the charge. And I, well, that's expensive. So, well, is it? So in looking at it, he had an electrical report from March 2015, because back in 2015, the electrician would have put 10 years, 5 years it's due. And we all know that the electrical regulations is, you know, 5 yearly. So that would have been 2020. So I said, you've been renting that illegally. Oh, and your EPC currently says F, which became illegal back in 2020 also. So I said, I can't put this agreement together for you, and your tenant can't move in on Friday until you rectify these problems. And it's just having that confidence, because we're the experts. We do our qualifications. We know what we're talking about, and we know how to manage arrears. We have training on it, you know. There's all kinds of ways of, you know, demonstrating that to your client, but it's giving that value back to them, saying, look, do not panic. We know what we're doing here.
Have you ever found yourselves uttering the words, don't panic, we're using PayProp, we've got this covered?
What is it? What's the phrase, Bernie? I'm David and I'm powered by PayProp.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess my wider question is, you know, we've obviously seen PayProp become a almost absolutely synonymous with a certain standard of how you would want your property managed, and particularly when it comes to the integrity of payments being received and the ease at which an agent, we know what it gives to an agent. We know that it does a lot of that heavy lifting that used to take us an awful lot of time, but you can also do that with confidence.
Yeah.
But it should also mean something to your end client. So it should mean something to your landlord that actually you're an agent that's so forward thinking, you're using a solution like PayProp that they can actually sort of start to breathe a little bit more easily at night.
Yeah. And in addition to that, you've got the underwriting of the rent. And you mentioned it earlier, David, if the tenant doesn't pay the rent, you don't get your fee. So with your rent guarantee and legal cover, you can build into PayProp. You know, we invoice it separate to differentiate it. So you've got your management fee, you've got your rent and legal, and any other bits and pieces all demonstrated on there. And it's kind of like, it's a lot easier. Like I talk to my clients before I take them on. I say, look, did you realize you can get an annual account summary of your entire property? You know, all the transactions throughout the year. You don't have to forage for receipts. You don't have to go through emails to, oh, where's that invoice from, you know, Chadwick, who did my boiler 6 months ago? You don't have to worry about that, because you do it through us. We've got it all on one database, all on the platform, tax deductible allowance. It's why wouldn't you, is the question. It's just, we make it so easy for our landlords and our tenants, really, that when something goes wrong, you think, well, how do you not get this? You know, how do you not understand?
Yeah. So you use the landlord app though, don't you?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, a lot of them, they like that actually. They log in and stuff. Some more than others, yeah, because people are technophobes, aren't they? But it's very good when people, you know, say, because we always sign them up to it. We say, look, do you want this? And they say, yeah. And then, you know, if they send an email, oh, I'm a bit disappointed you didn't respond to my email, you know, 3 hours ago. Well, we're not a reactive business unless it's maintenance. You know, we don't sit there like many companies do and use emails as an instant messaging service. Like, Bernie, if you email me in the morning, you're getting out of office and say, Bernie, just to let you know, I check my emails twice weekly. If you need me, pick up the flipping phone. If a landlord wants their statement and they haven't checked their junk or their spam, or they can't be bothered, then they can log onto the portal. And if they're too lazy to do that, they can pick up the phone and we can send it to them. So they can get the information very, very easily.
Absolutely. And I have a question. Have you ever been through an eviction?
Unfortunately, yes. Not one of my own tenants, I might disclaim.
I was just going to say,
yes,
because I know you've had PayProp since inception.
Yes.
You haven't had to go through the process since you've utilised PayProp. Amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. But talk us through the eviction process, actually, for those who are
Yeah. We do consultancy work, we do management takeovers, we do all sorts of things which involves taking on a tenancy that's not. I've even created an income stream off the back of it. and I do property MOTs for clients. So say David's a let-only client. He's like, well, I managed my property for 20 years. I'm very effective. I said, well, okay, I'll be the judge of that. Let me do a free MOT for you. And it'll be like a Property Mark compliance report where they do for their agents. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to review your paperwork. I'm going to review the condition of the property. That's all going to be free. However, if I identify any things that need doing, then obviously that comes at a cost. Say I need to rewrite your agreement, I need to reserve certain information, you need to give the deposit back, or any of that stuff will be chargeable. And we'll say, look, this is what we can do. And there's a lot of landlords that are terrified of that. I don't want to find out what you're going to discover because they're scared that you might find something and report them. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to make the world a better place. But anyway, back to your question, because I'm digressing again. The eviction process, long and arduous, especially the way the law favours the tenant. Now, the tenant will say the law favours the landlord. It does favour the tenant more so, although the law isn't really that fit for purpose in a lot of areas. So there's one that I did where I got the BBC involved, and there was a tenant locally, and we evicted the tenant. There was 2 years worth of arrears. The landlord was on his deathbed. It was a horrible situation. He was using the property as a dumping ground. So we went to court twice. And first time didn't turn up to court because he had COVID, but didn't demonstrate a positive test, which was a lie to buy time. But the judge allowed it. The judge said, well, we're going to have to reconvene. So we had the other hearing, and he didn't turn up to his next hearing because he was waiting for an operation for 2 years that conveniently came through. So that judge on that day said, if that tenant can't turn up for their own hearing, we'll make a hearing off the back. And I had a photo of my pack. So I had a wedge of the arrears, again, wasn't through us because it wasn't our tenant, but a wedge of the arrears, the conduct, reports from the local authority. And you're looking at a lot of stuff. Now, a lot of agents aren't equipped to go to court or represent their landlord in court. And we don't say we're a legal professional. We're lettings specialists. We're not allowed to charge and give legal advice, but we can prepare people for court and ensure they've got the necessary paperwork in place. And we were allocated what do they call an advocate that was there representing, and then I helped them with the paperwork. We reconvened, we got everything done. It was a long process, but it can be very, very difficult if you haven't got your house in order. For example, if you haven't got a rent account up to date, if you haven't got your rent and legal process in place, you haven't followed your statutory obligation as a landlord, possession hearings can be horrible, really horrible. But if you've got your house in order, it's very, very straightforward, really. And judges sigh a sigh of relief when they've got an agent that's sitting in front of them that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, very true.
So in terms of then sort of getting that, operating that service, at the end of the day, you are definitely going to end up with a client after that because they'll be happy.
Yeah.
You've kicked their mess into order, but you've got them a property back. Hopefully you're starting to recover arrears. I suppose if the tenant does remain at the property, they've at least got the message. They're now dealing with an agent that knows what they're talking about. There'll be no room to hide because you use information and systems that are completely up to date. So in terms of how PayProp backs that up, if you're using PayProp as well, not just to make sure that you're collecting your rents and dishing them back out to landlords on time, but you're also using it for arrears management. It sounds like that sort of is the backbone of everything that you do in terms of financial management and in terms of presenting that information back out to be that court, the landlords, the tenants themselves. It's all there at a touch of a button.
And it's interesting because we had a situation where a maths teacher tried to beat the system and they failed miserably. I mean, she was a primary school maths teacher, so she wasn't, a Harvard graduate or anything like that. But it was a case of, it sounds a bit more silly than it is, but the rent was due on the 30th of the month. She didn't pay on the 30th, she paid on the 1st. And then at the end of that month, she paid on the 30th. And then the next month, she paid on the 30th again. And then the next month, she paid on the first on the following month again. So she got herself 1 month in arrears there, but thought she could beat the system. Said, well, I paid in the month. Look, I paid that month. And then she did it again. And then we worked it out. And it's like, no, you're in arrears. And this is how we calculate. And there was so much back and forth with this tenant. And I said to them, again, another one we inherited on the management takeover, I might add. But then I said, I don't really want to evict her. You know, she is a school teacher. She's this, she's that. He's kept the rent really low. You know, she owns another property elsewhere that she rents to a family member. So she's not struggling. You know, it's not like she's struggling and, you know, us trying to get the rent is unfair, even though it's a contractual obligation. So anyway, she's paying cheap rent. She's not really looking after the property. She's trying to beat the system and she's quite unpleasant. And I said to the landlord, look, I appreciate you don't have to deal with this tenant on a daily basis. That's why you pay us for the managed service. But we don't like this tenant. She's not paying. She's trying to beat the system. She's rude to my team. We take mental health and well-being of everybody, including our staff, very seriously. She hasn't got any detrimental issues. However, she's affecting our team by being very obtuse. And the team are thinking, oh, we're getting another call from this tenant. Oh, what now? You know, but we still have to look after the tenant and maintain our duty of care. Anyway, we got the arrears all schedule sent out. And she said, oh, you do realise I'm a maths teacher. And I said, well, look, you know, we've done the checkout. You know, you're still 2 months in arrears. The deposit doesn't cover the arrears. And also on checkout, there was evidence of weed being smoked in the property and there was drawings all up the wall. So if you want, we could write to your employer, seeing as you work with children, and inform them what kind of a role model you are, or you could pay the outstanding rent. I mean, where do you want to go with it? It was a little bit harsh to a certain degree, but ultimately, why should she be treated any differently from anybody else? You know, and PayProp helped with that. More to the point, because they had a really good arrears schedule that said
David Votta is like the equalizer for properties. If you need your rent back in, he'll get it in. That's a great story.
Lawfully, I might add, and legitimately.
That's a great story.
That is yeah. So yeah. So that's how PayProp was able to help with the arrears. Yes, David.
Pretty much. Yeah, in the nuts and bolts of it.
That is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so I mean that's a fantastic success story. In case,
yeah,
even though you went a little bit off piste,
I did. Sorry,
but made it more interesting. I have to say, you know, we all like a little bit of interest in stories.
So David, just to sort of wrap this up, because I know that you'll be off to rent another property out very shortly, but just to wrap it up, in terms of if you were to it's easy, you know, it's easy preaching to the choir, because there's a lot of agents already using PayProp, and they get it. They know how easy it makes their life. They know the value that it adds to their customers, to the landlords, even to tenants, which I think is superb. If you can give a tenant a benefit in you using one of their services, it always makes it perfect. But if you were to just for a second imagine that you're speaking to an agent who doesn't know about the advantages of PayProp, what sort of advice would you offer that letting agent, you know, looking to bed this into their processes?
It's a lot of it is return on investment, and that's what a lot of agents do. They will look at it, and the first question they ask is, how much is it? That's the wrong question, and you're asking the wrong question. And agents also, I'm speaking very generally here, get very offended when they go out to a client, whether it's a sales client or a lettings client, and the first thing they say is, David, what's your fee? What are you going to charge me? And they get offended. They say, well, why are you asking me what my fee is? Let me talk about my service. And that is the important thing with PayProp. It's about the service. And before I set up my own company, I'd worked for big organizations, and I presented PayProp to them, and they could not see the benefit. We're too big, it will cost too much. And I worked it out. No, it wouldn't. No, you just need to be forward thinking. I think, okay, so how is this going to enhance my business to free me up to do more business at the other end? So all that nitty gritty, horrible, rubbishy stuff there, why do I want to spend any more time than necessary on that, where I could be generating more business in a time where we need more business more than ever? You know, there's hardly any landlords. Well, I say hardly any landlords. Sally Lawson will kill me if I say that. Of course, there's landlords, but there's not as many landlords as there once were. And you know, Office of National Statistics will back that up. Since 2017, I think we've lost 250,000 landlords, but that doesn't factor in ones that come back in, which I think we all agree they're not coming in their droves, are they? So, yeah, I'm going off piste again, aren't I?
No, you've done well. You've done well. You've answered every question. No further questions, Your Honour, from me.
Thank you.
I think that I find in favour of both David Votta as an advocate and also PayProp in terms of the solution, because I think it's, it's superb. We often think of the sort of shiny, rosy world of PayProp, which is the good bits. It's the collecting the money, it's claiming your commission, and it's sending it back out to a happy and satisfied client. But life doesn't always go to plan, and sometimes there are arrears. So where do those services that help us in the good times, where are they in the bad times? And it sounds like you're getting equal measure of support from both. So that's absolutely superb. And thank you very much for your time in talking about this today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, David.